I am Alara Monroe, and I was 28 years old the Thanksgiving night my father decided, without raising his voice, without shouting, that my mother and I no longer belonged at his table. It wasn't a dramatic announcement. There was no explosion, no slammed door. Just a calm, deliberate cruelty wrapped in politeness, served alongside roasted turkey and crystal glasses. That night, I learned that rejection doesn't always come as anger. Sometimes it comes as quiet certainty. Before I go any further, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. This channel has become a home for people who've been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside by the very families who should have protected them. Seeing this community grow across the world reminds us we're not alone. The house sat in Cedar Grove Heights, a gated neighborhood known for manicured lawns, silent streets, and the kind of wealth that never announces itself out loud. I grew up here. I learned how to ride a bike on this driveway. I scraped my knees on the same stone walkway I was standing on now. Yet as I stepped inside, the house felt unfamiliar, almost hostile, like a place that had decided to forget me. The smell of Thanksgiving filled the air. Roasted turkey, rosemary potatoes, cinnamon butter. Warm, comforting scents that should have made me feel safe. Instead, my chest felt tight, like the warmth stopped at the doorway and refused to follow me in. My mother, Maribel Monroe, stood beside me, her fingers wrapped firmly around mine. She wore a simple slate blue dress, pressed and modest, with flat shoes she'd owned for years. No diamonds, no designer labels, just quiet dignity. She looked exactly like herself, calm, composed, observant. But I knew that grip. It was the same one she used when I was a child and scared. The silent message, stay close. We'll get through this. My father, Nathaniel Monroe, stood near the dining room entrance holding a glass of wine. He looked polished, comfortable, successful. The man who once tucked me into bed now looked at me like I was a distant obligation he hadn't planned for. You're late, he said. No hug. No smile. No happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. Just that flat tone I'd grown used to over the past 3 years since he remarried. Traffic was bad on the expressway, I replied, forcing a smile. But we brought sweet potato pie. Your favorite. Before he could respond, his wife stepped forward. Rowan Monroe scanned us slowly from head to toe. Her lips curved into something that resembled a smile but never reached her eyes. She wore a deep emerald dress that hugged her perfectly, paired with heels that clicked sharply against the marble floor. Each step a reminder that this was her domain now. We already have dessert, she said smoothly. Homemade. The word homemade landed with weight, as if what we brought was somehow inferior by default. I swallowed my response. My mother's pies weren't just homemade, they were legendary. She'd learned the recipe from her grandmother and perfected it over decades. But tonight wasn't about defending recipes. It was about surviving the room. The dining area was already full. Rowan's parents sat comfortably near the head of the table, laughing loudly. Her sisters, Lydia and Brentley, were seated with their spouses, wine glasses already half empty. Everyone looked relaxed. Familiar. Settled. We were the disruption. My half-brother, Miles, barely 5 years old, darted between chairs in a tiny tailored blazer that matched my father's suit. He laughed freely, oblivious to the tension thick in the air. I felt a pang of sadness for him already. He was innocent now, but he was growing up in a house that treated exclusion like policy. Can we sit? My mother asked quietly. My father gestured vaguely toward 2 chairs squeezed at the far end of the table, closest to the kitchen doorway. Not beside him. Not near the center. Barely part of the table at all. We sat. Rowan tapped her glass gently, commanding attention without effort. Before we eat, I just want to thank everyone for coming to our home for Thanksgiving. Our home. The words echoed in my head. This was the house where my mother planted roses along the side yard, where she painted the guest room herself because contractors were expensive, where she stayed up late helping my father study through medical school. Now it was being rewritten as someone else's story. My mother squeezed my hand under the table. Stay calm, she whispered. Rowan's sister Lydia leaned forward, her smile sharp. So, Maribel, we heard you're living in Brookstone Flats now. That area is developing. The word developing was carefully chosen. It meant less than. It's close to the hospital, my mother replied calmly. Convenient for my shifts. Oh, you're still nursing? Lydia asked, her tone falsely sweet. That's admirable. I clenched my jaw. My mother was a senior surgical nurse with nearly 30 years of experience. She trained residents, managed operating rooms, saved lives. Lydia posted lifestyle content and called it a career. I opened my mouth, but my father cut in. Alara works in marketing, he said. The way he said it made it sound temporary. Small. Digital brand strategy, I corrected. I manage campaigns for national clients. How modern, Rowan's mother said dismissively, as if modernity itself were something to pity. The conversation moved on without us. Rowan talked about redecorating. New furniture. New art. New landscaping. I'm thinking of removing those old rose bushes, she said casually. They don't fit the aesthetic. They're heritage roses, I said quietly. My mother planted them for milestones. Rowan waved a hand. Everything is replaceable. The meaning wasn't subtle. My uncle Caleb, my father's younger brother, cleared his throat. Maybe we should say grace. But Rowan wasn't finished asserting control. Nathaniel and I are expanding, she announced proudly. We're acquiring the neighboring property. My mother went completely still. They're being foreclosed on, Lydia added with barely hidden glee. Couldn't keep up with the new association fees. The Hendersons? I asked. They've lived there for decades. Things change, Brentley shrugged. People who can't adapt get left behind. My mother's voice was calm, too calm. How much are the association fees now? $2,400 quarterly, my father replied. That's how we maintain standards. Standards. The words settled over the table like a verdict. When Maribel and I divorced, my father continued, resting his arm comfortably around Rowan, I realized I needed to upgrade my life. This neighborhood represents success. Upgrade. As if my mother had been outdated equipment. That's not fair, I said, my voice shaking. Alara, don't start, he warned. You're too sensitive. Just like your mother. The table went silent. You wouldn't be where you are without her, I shot back. She worked double shifts so you could study. She raised me while you chased prestige. His jaw tightened. I think you should both leave. The words hit hard. You're kicking us out? I stood, my chair scraping loudly. It's Thanksgiving. It's my house, he said coldly. And I won't tolerate disrespect. We've done nothing, I said, voice breaking. We just exist. That's the problem, Rowan said sweetly. You exist as reminders of the past. Past. I'm your daughter, I said. Or did you forget when you erased every photo of me from this house? They didn't match the decor, Rowan replied lightly. That was when my mother stood. We'll leave, she said calmly. But first, Nathaniel, there's something you need to understand. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thin folder. The room froze. And that was the moment everything began to change. My mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the folder on the table. She simply placed it down, carefully, deliberately, right in front of my father, as if she were laying a mirror between us and daring him to look. Open it, she said. Rowan laughed, sharp and dismissive. Nathaniel, don't humor this. We're not doing paperwork theatrics at dinner. My father hesitated. For a brief moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Then irritation returned, the familiar shield he used whenever he didn't want to feel small. He flipped the folder open with a sigh, like a man indulging nonsense. At first, nothing changed. Then his brow furrowed. He turned a page. Then another. The color drained from his face so quickly it startled me. What is this?" he whispered. Rowan leaned over his shoulder. "What now?" "These are deeds," he said slowly, eyes scanning line after line. "Property deeds." "Yes," my mother replied evenly. "Land deeds, to be precise. Properties located right here in Cedar Grove Heights." The room exploded in overlapping voices. "That's impossible. She's bluffing. You can't just." "Maribel, this isn't funny." Rowan snatched the folder from the table. "Anyone can print fake documents. This is pathetic." She flipped through the pages fast, her confidence eroding with each one. Official seals. County stamps. Dates stretching back decades. Her hands began to tremble. "These are recorded," my mother said calmly. "Public records. You're welcome to verify them." My Uncle Caleb leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "I remember her grandmother," he said slowly. "Edith Carter. People used to joke that she owned half the county before development even began." Rowan snapped her head toward him. "Caleb, stay out of this." "I won't," he replied. "Not anymore." I turned to my mother, my heart pounding. "Mama, what is he talking about?" She finally looked at me, and for the first time that night, her expression softened. "My grandmother was a very smart woman, Alara. Back when this land was farmland, she and my grandfather bought acres of it. Everyone thought they were foolish. They weren't. Rowan scoffed. Even if that were true, land from the 1950s doesn't magically turn into millions. It does when you don't sell, my mother replied. When you lease. When you invest. When you wait. My father looked up at her, eyes wide. You never told me. You never asked, she said quietly. I was your husband. You were busy becoming someone else. The words landed heavy. Rowan slammed the folder down. This proves nothing. Owning a few plots doesn't mean. 17 residential properties, my mother said calmly. 18, actually. I finalized another purchase last week. Silence. I felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt. You own homes here? I whispered. Yes, she said. But you live in Brookstone Flats, Lydia blurted out. You drive that old car. I like my apartment, my mother replied. And I like my car. Rowan's voice rose. This is manipulation. You're embarrassing us. No, my mother said. I'm clarifying power. She reached into her purse again and placed another document on the table. This, she said, is the mortgage note for the Henderson property. My stomach dropped. You bought their mortgage? 3 months ago, she replied. When they fell behind. My father stared at her. You foreclosed on them? They were offered options, she said. They chose a buyout. They're moving into a home I own in Lake Haven, better schools, lower payments, closer to family. That's still ruthless, Rowan snapped. It's ethical restructuring, my mother corrected. Something you wouldn't understand. Rowan's confidence was gone now. She backed away from the table like it might burn her. Nathaniel, call our lawyer, she said sharply. My mother smiled faintly. Richard Alcott? He manages 3 of my property portfolios. He'll confirm everything. Rowan's face went pale. You've been watching us, my father said slowly. I've been observing, my mother replied. There's a difference. He rubbed his temples. Why? Why didn't you tell me? During the marriage? During the divorce? Because I wanted to see who you were without my support, she said. I wanted to know if you'd still be kind. If you'd still be a father. The table went quiet. You erased our daughter, she continued, her voice steady but sharp. You replaced her photos like she never existed. You allowed your wife to belittle her. That's not true, he muttered. Did you help her with her student loans? My mother asked. He hesitated. The same year you bought a $90,000 car? She pressed. My breath caught. I turned to him slowly. You told me money was tight. I thought you were managing, he said weakly. I was surviving, I replied. There's a difference. Caleb slammed his palm on the table. She graduated top of her class. Works herself into exhaustion. And you let her drown. Rowan opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. My mother straightened. Now let's discuss the homeowners association. Every head snapped toward her. I am the majority stakeholder, she said. 62% of voting power. Rowan gasped. You control the association? Yes. My father swallowed hard. Those fee increases. I approved them, my mother said. To see who valued community and who valued exclusion. You own the land under this house? My father asked hoarsely. I do, she replied. Your mortgage is with the bank. Your land lease renews in 18 months. Rowan shrieked. That's extortion. It's market rate, my mother said calmly. A 45% adjustment. My father slumped into his chair. Maribel, please. She gathered the documents slowly. We're done here. She turned to me. Are you ready to go? I nodded. As we stood, Rowan found her voice again. You can't do this. You're tearing apart the neighborhood. I'm correcting it, my mother said. The families being pushed out are being relocated into properties I own, at reduced rates. The ones who use this place as a status weapon can pay market price or leave. Caleb let out a low whistle. You're rebuilding the whole place. I'm restoring balance, she replied. My father stood suddenly. I love you, he said to me, desperation cracking his voice. I never stopped. Love wasn't words. Love was presence. And he had chosen absence. We walked toward the door, and that's when a small voice stopped me. Why are you crying? I turned. Miles stood in the hallway, clutching his toy car. I knelt. Sometimes adults hurt each other's feelings, I said softly. It's not your fault. Are you my sister? He asked. My heart cracked. I am, I said gently. And maybe someday, when you're older, we'll talk. Rowan snapped. Miles, go to your room. He hesitated. But you were mean to her. The room froze. We left without another word. And for the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Relief. The front door closed behind us with a soft, final click. No shouting followed. No footsteps chased us down the hallway. No last-minute apology came flying after us to undo what had already been done. The cold evening air hit my face as soon as we stepped outside, sharp and grounding. It was the kind of cold that clears your head, that forces you to breathe deeply whether you want to or not. I stood on the stone walkway for a moment, staring back at the house in Cedar Grove Heights. The house I once called home, the house that now felt like a carefully curated lie. Warm light spilled from the windows. Inside, the Thanksgiving dinner sat untouched, food growing cold, conversations fractured into stunned silence and whispered panic. From the outside, it looked peaceful. Perfect. But I knew better now. My mother walked ahead toward her car, her posture straight, her steps unhurried. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't second-guessing herself. She looked lighter than I had seen her in years. My Uncle Caleb followed behind us, holding her coat, shaking his head in disbelief. "Maribel," he said with a half-laugh, half-awe, "you are officially the most terrifying woman I know." She smiled faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." We got into the car, an older, well-maintained sedan my mother had driven for years despite having more than enough money to replace it. The engine started, humming quietly, but she didn't pull away immediately. For a moment, none of us spoke. My hands rested in my lap, trembling, not from fear, but from everything crashing down at once. Years of confusion. Years of self-doubt. Years of thinking my worth depended on whether my father chose me. Then my mother laughed. Not bitter laughter. Not sharp laughter. Free laughter. I turned to her, startled. "Mama, I've been carrying that folder for 3 years," she said, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye. 3 years, waiting for the right moment. Caleb let out a low whistle. "And you chose Thanksgiving." She nodded. I knew Rowan would push eventually. People like her can't help themselves. They always want to prove they're in control. I leaned my head back against the seat, staring at the ceiling. "You planned all of this?" "Yes," she said simply. "From the day your father moved out." The weight of that hit me slowly. "Why didn't you tell me?" She turned toward me fully now, her expression soft but steady. "Because I needed you to become strong without knowing you had a safety net." My throat tightened. "I wanted your confidence to be real," she continued. "Not borrowed. Not dependent on my money. I wanted you to build your career believing it was yours alone." "I thought we were struggling," I whispered. "I worried about you all the time." "I know, baby," she said gently. "And I'm sorry for that part. But look at you. You graduated with honors. You work harder than anyone I know. You survived being underestimated without letting it turn you bitter." Caleb nodded. "She's right. You built yourself." My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my father. "Nathaniel, please come back. Let's talk." "I'm sorry." My chest tightened, not with hope, but with exhaustion. I stared at the screen for a long moment before handing the phone to my mother. She read the message, then handed it back with a small shrug. "Your choice, Alara. Always your choice." I thought about the birthdays he forgot, the graduation he skipped, the night I sat alone in a hospital bed after emergency surgery, calling him while he was on vacation with people who barely tolerated my existence. I typed carefully. "I hope one day you understand what you lost. But I'm done begging for space at a table that was never meant for me. I'm building my own." I hit send. And just like that, something inside me unclenched. We drove back to Brookstone Flats, the developing neighborhood Rowan's family had mocked. The parking lot lights glowed softly. Children laughed somewhere nearby. Neighbors stood chatting in small groups. There was warmth here, not the polished kind, but the real kind. "Our place," my mother said as she parked. "At least for now." Inside, she set her purse down and disappeared briefly into her bedroom. When she returned, she carried another folder. My stomach flipped. "There's more." She nodded. "I wanted to wait until tonight." She handed it to me. "A trust," she said. "Established when you were born." My hands shook as I opened it. The numbers made my vision blur. $2.6 million. I couldn't breathe. "Mama, this isn't real." "It is," she said firmly. "And it's yours." Tears spilled down my face. "Your student loans," she continued calmly, "paid off last month. I didn't want the money influencing your decisions before now." "You paid them off?" I whispered. "Yes. And I'm transferring 3 rental properties into your name. Starter properties. You'll learn, grow, build." I sank onto the couch, sobbing openly. "I don't deserve this. I said through tears. She knelt in front of me, gripping my hands tightly. You deserve everything. You are kind, disciplined, and strong. You survived rejection without becoming cruel. Caleb raised an imaginary glass. To Maribel Monroe, the woman who played chess while everyone else played checkers. We laughed through tears. That night, we ordered Chinese food. Ate straight from the containers. Talked about the future instead of the past. I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. Another message from my father. Nathaniel, I'll put your photos back. We'll make room for you. I deleted it. Photos weren't the problem. Love wasn't decor. Over the next weeks, Cedar Grove Heights quietly changed. Some families accepted my mother's lease renewals gratefully. Others sold and moved away. New families moved in, families who valued community over status. Rowan stopped posting online. My father stopped calling. And for the first time, my life felt peaceful. I didn't win anything that night. I reclaimed myself. And if you've ever been made to feel small by people who share your blood, remember this. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to build your own table. Before you go, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. This community is made up of people who understand that family is chosen by love, respect, and presence. And you are always welcome where you are valued.